Good morning, dear students. Today we are going to discuss the third module in the text Introducing Literature. The text prescribed for the first semester BA English students under Calicut University as their core course. So here we are going to discuss the third module, Literature and Ideology. No literary work or no creative works are innocent means all creative works of human beings have some ideologies instilled into it. That's what we are going to discuss in this module. This module empowers students to find out the ideology that sometimes lay hidden inside a text, or sometimes that may be evident while reading a text. So let's get into the text of the third module, Literature and Ideology. So what we are going to discuss is how to find out the ideology written into a text. So this module equips the learners to read text closely, critically and politically, which would help them realize that literature is not straightforward and does not convey direct meanings. We all know that literature doesn't convey meanings directly. Literature communicates through suggestions that makes the readers to find meanings from a literature, or that makes them to find out what are the ideologies written into that particular text. So sometimes there will be some political ideologies, sometimes there will be some social or class-based or caste-based ideologies written into a text. So how to find out these things from literature? It encourages them to read beyond the literal and enables them to perceive how literary or cultural texts conceal or interrogate power. So this module equips the learners to find out the reflection of power structures in a particular text produced by a certain community, produced by a particular social structure, how the power structure in that particular social structure or in that particular community that reflects into a text. It could be better explained by looking into Malayalam literature and also into the Malayalam language and also into Malayalam films. How these things reflect the power structures of Kerala community. You must have watched Malayalam films which normally problematize gullies or ghettos or slums, just like these slums or ghettos or gullies are the source of all types of antisocial activities. A best example is Matanjeri. There is a documentary that is titled Filmic Representation of the Ghettos of Matanjeri. So the people behind that documentary are having a journey through that Matanjeri, the ghettos of Matanjeri, which are represented in films. Most of the Malayalam films represent the ghettos of Matanjeri as a place which is the sources of all types of antisocial activities. For example, the movie Naran, in which there is the hero who, after a fight with the villains, he tells to the policeman that these are the people whom the villagers hired for beating this hero, and they are from Matanjeri. And there are some other representations also, problematizing of some particular community, problematizing of some particular religion in Malayalam films that we can normally see. So these are all unreal representations. The documentary with evidence proves that the real people living in Matanjeri are normal people, just like all other people in Kerala, just like ourselves. They are also peace-loving people, they are common people, and they are suffering, they are having lots of sufferings in their life due to the unreal representation of these people and these places in Malayalam film. Matanjeriയിലെ പെൺകുട്ടികളെയും ആൺകുട്ടികൾക്കും വിവാഹാലോചനകൾ പോലും വരുന്നില്ല എന്നാണ് അവർ ആ ഡോക്യുമെന്ററിയിൽ പറയുന്നത്. The outside world always looks into this place as a kind of all these kinds of quotation works and antisocial works. Why Malayalam films do represent this place as a place of all types of antisocial activities. You can look into the representation of the places like Ottapalam in Malayalam films. Ottapalam is a place normally inhabited by upper class people, and this place is represented in most of Malayalam films as a place with having a calm atmosphere, and the background music always is used, the classical music, the calm and quiet music is used while showing the places like Ottapalam, like that. So that is a kind of representation that is being forced by the power structure prevailing in our society. Sometimes literature question the prevailing power structure in a society, and most of the time what happens is that literature empowers the prevailing power structure, justifies the prevailing power structure in a society. That you can see while looking into the representation of feminine characters in Malayalam movies. They always are represented as submissive characters. They always get submissive roles in Malayalam films. And there are exceptions, but these exceptions could not be cited as examples. Majority of Malayalam films represent feminine characters as submissive characters. The hero, the male hero, is always placed on the center, and these feminine characters, the roles of the feminine characters are centered around this masculine character. That we can find in Malayalam films. So what this communicates? Actually, these films normally do communicate the prevailing power structure, means the patriarchal power structure of Malayalam community or Kerala community. Our community is a patriarchal or male dominated community, and it is being reflected in our films too. So that happens in literature, in all kinds of creative products of human beings. This we can see. Normally, most of these literary works empower the prevailing power structure. You can look into the representation of Dalit people in literature, in films, in art, how these Dalit peoples are represented. And while looking into the heroes, we normally do find heroes with fair complexion, masculine heroes with a fair complexion, and having their high status in the society, born high class people. And while their sidekicks, look into the sidekicks of the people who are the sidekicks of the hero, their characters are always circling around the hero, and these people normally do belong to the lower classes. They will be less educated and less privileged, less handsome than the hero. Their roles always are dependent upon the role of the hero, the main hero of the novel or the movie, who normally do belong to a high class family. This textbook, Introducing Literature, is a practical oriented textbook where you have lots of works to do. Instead of elaborating the theories of literature, this textbook make you understand how to apply these theories in real literature. So you have lots of practical works in this textbook. So there are two major works in this textbook which you have to analyze based upon these theories that we do discuss. The two texts prescribed focus on how power operates in man's relationship with the society and the environment. So these two textbooks, that means a Hanging by George Orwell, then The Adivasi Will Not Dance by Hansda Sovendra Shekhar. These two textbooks which will help you while analyzing these texts based on these theories, that will help you to find out the ideology written into a textbook. So while analyzing these textbooks, you will be able to understand how the prevailing structure, power structure that works on an art of work, a literary work, and how this ideology gets into the writing of a particular author. So, and how to find out the ideology hidden in a particular textbook. So, there are certain concepts or terms and concepts discussed in this textbook, which are power, hegemony, subjectivity, irony, interpellation, discourse, etc. The term power doesn't refers to the physical strength or power. The power refers to the discourse of power that happens in a particular social structure. Who enjoys the discourse of power in that particular social structure, and if it is a patriarchal society, how the male characters, they enjoy that power over the subordinate female characters. If the society is having a particular class structure with the aristocrats or the bourgeois class or the working class in that society, and the term power refers to how these particular people belonging to separate classes in the society enjoy this kind of discourse of power upon the other classes in the society. And so hegemony is actually the process through which the dominant group or classes of people, they propagate their beliefs and ideas and rule over the other subordinate people with their own consent. So the people who are suppressed by the powerful people, they approve their suppression without questioning. They never question their suppression, and they also believe that they have to be suppressed. They believe that there is no injustice in their suppression. So here the subordinate people are suppressed by their own consent. Another topic that we have to discuss is interpellation. Interpellation means it refers the process of voluntarily assimilating them into the mainstream thinking. Means the subordinate people, they with their own willingness, they assimilate themselves into the mainstream thinking. നിലനിൽക്കുന്ന സാമൂഹിക വ്യവസ്ഥിതിയുടെ മുഖ്യധാര ചിന്തയിലേക്ക് അടിച്ചമർത്തപ്പെട്ട വിഭാഗവും അവർക്കെതിരെ നിലനിൽക്കുന്ന ഇൻജസ്റ്റിസിനെ തിരിച്ചറിയാതെ അവരും ഇതിനെ അംഗീകരിച്ചുകൊണ്ട് ആ ഒരു സ്ട്രീമിലേക്ക് അവരും എത്തിച്ചേരുന്ന ഒരു സ്റ്റേജിനെയാണ് ഇന്റർപെലേഷൻ എന്നുകൊണ്ട് ഉദ്ദേശിക്കുന്നത്. The dominant beliefs prevailing in a particular social structure that legitimize the prevailing domination of a particular class of people or group of people or a particular gender over the other genders or other classes or other groups is called as ideology, and the term was used by the Marxist philosopher Louis Althusser. So Louis Althusser used the term the ideology to refer to the dominant beliefs and ideas and representations which legitimize existing power relations. ഒരു സമൂഹത്തിലെ ഒരു സോഷ്യൽ സ്ട്രക്ചറിൽ നിലനിൽക്കുന്ന ആധിപത്യത്തിന്റെ ഒരു വിഭാഗത്തിന്റെ ആധിപത്യത്തിന് അല്ലെങ്കിൽ നിലനിൽക്കുന്ന പവർ റിലേഷൻസിനെ ലെജിറ്റിമൈസ് ചെയ്യുന്ന ഡോമിനന്റ് ബിലീഫ്സിനെയും ഐഡിയാസിനെയും റെപ്രസെന്റേഷൻസിനെയുമാണ് ഐഡിയോളജി എന്നുകൊണ്ട് ലൂയിസ് ആൽത്തുസർ പറയുന്നത്. So we are trying to find out how these ideologies get injected into a work of literature. That's what we are trying to find out in this module. According to Althusser, there are two ways in which the existing power relations are enforced. So according to Althusser, in a social structure, the ideology, that means the dominant beliefs or representations that legitimize the prevailing power structures, നിലനിൽക്കുന്ന പവർ സ്ട്രക്ചറിനെ ലെജിറ്റിമൈസ് ചെയ്യുന്ന ചിന്താധാരകളും അതുപോലെ തന്നെ റെപ്രസെന്റേഷൻസിനൊക്കെയാണ് ഐഡിയോളജി എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്. ഈ ഐഡിയോളജി ഒരു സമൂഹത്തിലേക്ക് ഇൻജെക്ട് ചെയ്യപ്പെടുന്നത് രണ്ട് രീതിയിലാണ് എന്നാണ് ആൽത്തുസർ പറയുന്നത്. സോ there are two ways through which this ideology gets into or get enforced in a social society or social structure. The first one is through RSAs and the second one is through ISAs. So let's look into what RSA is and what ISA is. So RSA refers to repressive state apparatus, means This enforcing of the prevailing power structure or ideology that happens in a society through the force of the government or through institutions which use brute force such as the army and the police, which he calls the repressive state apparatus. നിലനിൽക്കുന്ന ഗവൺമെന്റിന്റെ തന്നെ ഫോഴ്സുകളെ ഉപയോഗിച്ചുകൊണ്ട് ആ പവർ റിലേഷൻസിനെ, ഒരു സമൂഹത്തിലെ പവർ സ്ട്രക്ചറിനെ മെയിൻറ്റെയിൻ ചെയ്ത് കൊണ്ടുപോകുന്നതിനെയാണ് RSIs എന്നുകൊണ്ട് ഉദ്ദേശിക്കുന്നത്, repressive state apparatus. ISIs refers to ideological state apparatus. Ideological state apparatus refers to the kind of social institutions like schools or family, religion, politics and the media, which he calls ideological state apparatus or ISIs. How the prevailing power structures are being enforced by our prevailing social institutions like schools, our media, literature, politics, family, etc. All these things collectively form ISIs or ideological state apparatus. Harold Pinter, the famous literary figure, he says any ordinary conversation may be perceived as power play. In any conversation, we exchange our views, our ideas of the world, our values, and expect our listener to comply with our views. We see how people get into argument. Imagine that there is a person who is a follower of or is an activist of a particular political party, and who is talking to a person who is a follower of another particular political party. They are having a conversation about some contemporary issues. That normally ends up in a quarrel because there will be some critical remarks against the government, and one of them will be a supporter of that government or the political party representing that particular government. So any particular conversation is a kind of power play. That is the opinion of Harold Pinter, because a person is making an argument and he expects the other person who is listening to his argument to agree with him. If he is not in agreement with his argument, that ends up in a quarrel. That happens in writing also. In personal conversation, there is a power play, and the same thing happens in writing also. Because in writing, a person who is trying to communicate directly or indirectly to the readers in what ideology he believes or what ideology he supports. The only difference is that the readers can react as immediately as in the first instance, means as in a conversation. Literature is a written expression of our experience of the world. No writer or no man of letters can produce a work of art from vacuum. ശൂന്യതയിൽ നിന്ന് ആർക്കും ഒന്നും പ്രൊഡ്യൂസ് ചെയ്യാൻ കഴിയില്ല. So as William Wordsworth did say about poetry, that poetry is a spontaneous overflow of powerful emotions. So a poet, while trying to write a poem, is actually trying to represent what he has perceived, something that he has experienced in his life. So it is a representation of the real life. So it deals with man's relationship with his society, with his environment, his relationships, etc. So every person is trying to recollect something that happened in his daily life while writing a work of art. He can use his imagination, or he can have certain decorations or embellishments while writing a work of art, but still it is something that he received from his outer reality or from his outer world. When we learn a text, we have to learn to interact with the writer and his ideology. Every writer will be having his own perspectives. So if he is writing about a certain incident that happened in his society or in his world, and he is writing about it, he will be writing about that incident from a particular angle, looking at that incident from a particular angle. every incident or everything has various dimensions through which we can look at it, through which we can analyze it. Any incident or anything, any happenings in our society has various angles. So any writer who is producing a work of art or literature will be having his own ideology and his own way of looking at things. So he is trying to represent that in his own way. In this module, we are trying to find out what is the ideology of the writer, how he is looking at a particular thing, and how this ideology reflects the prevailing power structures in a society, how the writer is being influenced by the prevailing power structures in a society, and what is the writer's take on the prevailing power structures in a society. ഒരു സമൂഹത്തിൽ നിലനിൽക്കുന്ന പവർ സ്ട്രക്ചർ ഒരു റൈറ്ററെ എത്രത്തോളം സ്വാധീനിച്ചിട്ടുണ്ട് എന്നുള്ളത് അയാളുടെ റൈറ്റിംഗ്സ് നോക്കിക്കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ നമുക്ക് മനസ്സിലാക്കാൻ കഴിയും. ഓരോരുത്തർക്കും അവരുടേതായിട്ടുള്ള വീക്ഷണകോണുകൾ ഉണ്ടായിരിക്കും, പെർസ്പെക്റ്റീവ്സ് ഉണ്ടായിരിക്കും ഓരോ കാര്യത്തിനെയും നോക്കിക്കാണുന്ന സമയത്ത്. അപ്പോൾ ഒരു ഇൻസിഡന്റിനെ അയാൾ ഒരു വർക്ക് ഓഫ് ആർട്ടായിട്ട് പ്രൊഡ്യൂസ് ചെയ്യുന്ന സമയത്ത് അതിന് ഇപ്പോൾ ഫോർ എക്സാമ്പിൾ ദർ ആർ ടു ഫിൽംസ് under production in Malayalam film industry about Varyam Kunnathu Kunyamal Haji. In one movie he is represented as a hero, a brave freedom fighter, and in another movie he is represented as a villain. So there are different perspectives through which we can approach anything, and that happens in literature also. So we are trying to find out the ideology written into a text, the ideology of the author, the ideology of the work, or the ideology of literature. So there are two ways to represent things about the power structure prevailing in a society. One way is to legitimize the prevailing power structures, justify the prevailing power structures. The other way is to question the prevailing power structures. So a literary text may document how dominant classes abuse power to exercise their monopoly over less fortunate beings. That means questioning of the prevailing power structure, how they use, the dominant people use power to abuse the less fortunate people. So that way, that a literature can represent. The other way a literary work can represent the power relation is to reinforce existing power relations. നിലനിൽക്കുന്ന പവർ റിലേഷൻസിനെ റീഇൻഫോഴ്സ് ചെയ്യാനും ലിറ്ററേച്ചറിനെ ഉപയോഗിക്കാം. Here you have a text. It is an extract from The God of Small Things by Arundhati Roy, the Booker Prize winning text. Here what you have to do is you have to go through the text. This is a practical part that you have to do. You have to go through the text, and after that you are having some classroom activities and some exercises for assignment. This practical part we can discuss through other platforms. So here I am winding up this session. So what you have to do is you have to go through the previous portions that we have already discussed, and after that you have to go through this extract from The God of Small Things by Arundhati Roy. And after that there are some classroom activities. Well, the first one is in the above passage, how do you think Arundhati Roy documents the discrimination against and ostracism of the lower caste perpetrator in the social history of Kerala? That you have to find out, and you have to make a write-up about that. The second thing, how does she sensitize the readers to the social injustice committed against the Paravans? ഇതിനെങ്ങനെയാണ് സെൻസിറ്റൈസ് ചെയ്യുന്നത് എന്നുള്ളതാണ് ചോദിക്കുന്നത്. പറവൻസിനെതിരെയുള്ള ആ ഒരു സോഷ്യൽ ഇൻജസ്റ്റിസിനെ എങ്ങനെയാണ് ഇതിൽ സെൻസിറ്റൈസ് ചെയ്യുന്നത് എന്നുള്ളത്. Then there is another assignment for you. This culture of untouchability still persists as recent incidents in Kerala and elsewhere prove. Can you cite one such real life incident in the recent years? Write a diary entry or a letter or a poem on the same incident. Untouchability and these kinds of caste discrimination and class discrimination is supposed to be eliminated from our society. What you have to do is you have to document, you have to cite some examples for the class and caste discrimination prevailing in our present Kerala community or somewhere else outside Kerala, means they are in India. In North, there are lots of incidents, the issues with Dalit people, outcast people, lots of issues are there that you must have gone through in newspaper or in other some medias. But there are certain incidents happened in our Kerala community itself like this. That is actually a shame for the entire Malayali Kerala people. Recently, there was an incident, a man who is in power, who is a part of Kerala government, made a shameful comment about Adivasi people. That was really shameful for the entire Kerala Malayali people. So there are lots of such incidents. What you have to do is you have to write an assignment. In that assignment you have to mention such incidents happened in Kerala or outside Kerala. So that's all. So I am winding up this session. Thank you.